webinar on analysis of Pakistan's institutional capacity for climate action. This session is part of a series of four sessions around climate resilience. We had the first one on 18th of September about climate finance. Today's discussion will be around Pakistan's institutional capacity for climate action. The third one scheduled for the 26th is around the DRR policy implementation, and the fourth one is around loss and damage. This exercise is being done in collaboration with Oxfam Pakistan. As a run-up to COP28, we thought it is the best time to look at our institutional capacity, the vulnerabilities, the strengths, the need for improvement. How do we assess ourselves? How is Pakistan positioned in terms of SDG 13 climate action? In that regard, I will initially go to our colleague Awais, who has prepared a paper and will share a set of preliminary findings with you to generate a debate and also seek your input and feedback to further strengthen the document. So today's discussion essentially will focus around SDG 13 and talk about strengthening the capacities of the systems, governance mechanisms, communities to undertake climate action through stringent policies and adaptive governance. So before I come to you, Awais, I would like to request Dr. Shafqat Munir, Deputy Executive Director, STPI, for his welcome remarks.
Thank you, Khabar. Thank you very much. As Khabar has just mentioned, that this is a series of our reports which we are launching soon, prior to the COP28. But this is kind of a session with the experts or the people, those who are working in the field, so that we can have some of your ideas and thoughts on it to further get information to feed into our papers. So that's a kind of a pre-launch seminar series by SDPI. Today, as you know, the paper would be presented on analysis of Pakistan's institutional capacity for climate action. See, climate action, when we talk about SDG 13, we cannot ignore SDG 12, which is on sustainable consumption and production. And that encompasses the whole area of climate action, be it, the curtailing the carbon emissions by reducing less production, less consumption, or to any kind of further action which actually limit the human activity in generating carbon and eliminating carbon from our size of the pie. So that's the important area. But for that, so today we are discussing whether our institutional capacity at the government level, at provinces level, or even at the private sector, are we ready for that? Are we really taking real side action for climate action? So these are some of the issues which will be discussed today. And I hope that this seminar will bring some more ideas. So that's why we have experts with us in the panel. And Khabar will take you on that. And in between, I will also later on chip in. So formally welcome everyone for this seminar.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. So we have a relevant and pertinent set of speakers here today who have been engaged in different capacities with regards to climate action. We have, first of all, Ms. Shiba Tariq, who is a lecturer at the Social Policy, Food Security and Environment Policy at NUST. We have Mr. Mujahid Hussain Saab, Deputy Manager Climate Change at NDRMF. Online, we will be joined by Mr. Salim Shehzad Malik, Director P&IC NDMA. Of course, Aftab Alam Khan Saab, CEO, Resilient Future International. Without further ado, I would request my colleague Mohammad Awais Umar, Research Associate at Sustainable Development Policy Institute, to please share with us some of the preliminary findings to kick off today's.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you, Dr. Shafqat, for setting up the stage. In my presentation today, I will briefly be talking about the climate action, the climate vulnerabilities of Pakistan, then what actions so far Pakistan has taken in terms of the implementation of climate action, the role of federal and provincial institutions, and the challenges Pakistan has been facing in implementation of these climate actions at national, local, and provincial level. Then at the end, I will be pointing out some questions to the panelists for further discussion and debate. If we talk about the climate action, it calls upon the nations to take urgent actions to combat climate change and its impact. It has three core targets. The first target talks about strengthening resilience and adaptive capacity to climate-related hazards and natural disasters in the country. The second target talks about integrating climate change measures into national policy and strategy and into planning. And the third one, urging improving institutional capacity on climate change, mitigation, adaptation, impacts reduction, and early warning. Here I am just quoting some of the latest figures about Pakistan's vulnerability to climate change. We can see that Pakistan is fifth most vulnerable country to climate change. We have already achieved reached to 0.5% increase in our annual mean temperature over the past 50 years, and the flood 2022 cost over US $30 billion in loss and damage. This is just an overview of the climate vulnerability. The other vulnerability can be seen in terms of heat wave incidents, floods, availability of water for agriculture in semi-arid and arid region of Pakistan. Then we will talk. Then when we talk about climate action, the step Pakistan has taken to implement the climate action in Pakistan, we can see the climate change policy, which was initially talks about the previous version of climate change policy 2012 talks about climate resilience, development, and adaptation. But its latest version, the 2021, emphasizes on adaptation and mitigation through natural-based solution and multiple initiatives, which is basically the objective, which is basically alignment. They have aligned it with the climate action SDG 13. Then Pakistan has developed a national climate resilience and adaptation plan 2023-2030, which identifies climate-induced vulnerabilities and outline policy and strategies and possible adaptation action to save lives and keep the country back on track for sustainable growth. In this document, they have highlighted 8 most vulnerable sectors which are highly affected by climate change. For the implementation of climate change policy, we can see that the government has developed a national climate change policy implementation committee at a federal level, which is responsible for overseeing the progress of the effective implementation of climate change policy. At the provincial level, under this committee, all 4 provinces have set up implementation committees and climate change units under the planning and development departments, which implements the decisions of National Climate Change Policy Implementation Committee at provincial level. Then the National Climate Change Policy requires that each province should have come up with their own national provincial climate change policy. In this regard, if we can see that only Sindh and KPK has been able to finalize and approve their climate change policy. Punjab has formulated its climate change policy back in 2017, but still is struggling to approving its draft version. And when we talk about Balochistan, then there is no such policy exist at the province in Balochistan. Then in link with the climate change policy, the provincial government has also been in process of developing climate change action plan in provinces. The Punjab and KPK government have developed their climate change action plans, while the government of Sindh plans to implement the framework of action plan for climate change and adaptation initiatives. But if we talk about Balochistan, which still lag behind, they are still stuck at developing their climate change policies. Other than these policy initiatives, we can see multiple projects government have launched for the implementation of, you can say, the climate action. We can say the 10 billion tree tsunami, Green Clean Pakistan initiative, Recharge Pakistan program, Protected Area initiative, ecosystem restoration funds, etc. are some of the examples examples of the project that Pakistan have implemented. If we talk about the climate actions progress, we somehow can say that Pakistan made some progress of the target of SDGs 13, but by developing actions, policies, and some other initiative which I just talked about. But there is more need to be done to ensure these policies are implemented effectively at the grassroots level. We have observed a misconnection between federal and provincial government level to the community level. Then we talk about while talking about the role of federal and provincial institutions, we can say that after 18 amendment in the constitution, the environment subject has been developed to the provinces, but still the climate change institutions and policies at federal and provincial level both are functional in their respective domains. The federal ministry usually responsible for liaising with global climate change regime, developing climate change policies, playing a role as a facilitator and coordinator, encouraging the mainstreaming of climate change policy and program within federal and provincial government, while the provincial environmental departments, which are responsible for implementing policy, strategy, and program across the country. Here is just an overview of the federal setup, federal ministry, which has 5 attached departments for the Environment Protection Agency, Global Climate Change Impact Study Center, Islamabad Wildlife Board, Zoological Department, Climate Resilience, Urban Human Settlement Unit. These all are working on their domain, working in their domain. At the provincial level, if we see, the provinces has a detailed setup institution in place, which ranges from the provincial government to through Environmental Protection Agency. They have their reached till district, tehsil, and union council level. But the question is, despite having these set up institution in place at provincial level, why we are still lacking behind implementing the climate change actions in Pakistan? We can say the first more important challenge we have identified is the enforcement and compliance to climate change related action. We observed that the government institution responsible for implementing climate action failed to effectively implement the rules and regulation and environmental standard. The ban on plastic in Islamabad is one of the example. Government imposed a ban, but still some grocery stores and shopkeepers are using plastic bags. Then climate change financing, which is also a major challenge in implementing, because implementing such policy required financial resources. In mitigation and adaptation, we can see only the transition of energy sector, 60% to renewable energy and 30% electric vehicle targets that Pakistan have mentioned in its NDCs require around $101 billion. Similarly, climate change adaptation, if we talk about adaptation, then Pakistan requires 7 to 14 billion per annum to adopt the climate change impacts. Then public awareness is also an other challenge which we have identified that Pakistan have been facing, because knowledge and awareness about climate change is prerequisite for developing strategies to respond to threats. Therefore, affecting engagement of the people in mitigation and adaptation measure largely depends upon their knowledge and understanding of climate change. In Pakistan, government have took various measures for raising awareness about public knowledge and awareness about climate change impacts, but still lots need to be done. Then institutional capacity, the last and the most important point, because an effective institutional coordination mechanism seems weak in Pakistan because of the dichotomy of goals and responsibility, institutional overlap, and lack of information sharing among the institutions and ministry at the federal and provincial level are major challenges in undertaking well-coordinated climate change actions. Based on these challenges, I would request panelists to please share their valuable thoughts on what are the other major barriers they seem to be important in implementation of climate change policies in Pakistan, and how these can be overcome, how the institution capacity can be strengthened to enhance coordination and collaboration among different entities involved in climate action at national, provincial, and local level. What are the priority areas and action that needs to be undertaken to improve Pakistan institutional capacity for climate action in short, medium, and long term, and the role of technology in innovation play an the role of technology and innovation in Pakistan, improving Pakistan institutional capacity for climate action. With this, and I would hand over the session to floor to Khabar for further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Avais. So what I gather from the presentation and of course the agenda setting points here is the discussion around how few provinces take the lead in developing their relevant policies, and some of a couple of them require some more facilitation in terms of coming up with their own policies and implementation plans. Another thing is that we have policies in place at different levels. The question remains around the coordination and implementation aspects of those policies. Of course, at the federal level, things might be more streamlined, but when it comes to subnational level coordination, there are certain questions that exist. So to take this discussion forward, Shiba, if I can come to you first, and in light of what Avais if you could kindly touch upon the state of climate preparedness, risk reduction, and how well our institutions are positioned to actually take care of climate action agenda.
Thank you, Avais. Mr. Avais, you highlighted a very pertinent topic. If we talk about the 4R framework, it also emphasizes and highlights about enhancing the state capacities and to have inclusive societies and build the resilience of the communities. But I would like to add on a few points which needs attention by certain authorities regarding disaster risk reduction. As I have done research in disaster risk reduction as well as in climate change adaptation and disaster preparedness as well. So I would like to add a few points that there needs to be an integration of the DRR in our national development plans as well as poverty reduction strategy papers. Then there needs to be a decentralization of the core responsibilities of the DRR legislation and rules and regulations to not only to the provincial level, but also to the district level. Then DRR plans also need to be based upon the assessments that identify the vulnerability. So by vulnerability, I mean the pockets in which the vulnerable people are residing. That needs to be highlighted. Then involvement of women as stakeholders to build resilient communities is a requirement, because whenever we observe any policy, we see that there is a lack of women participation in that. So when we say that we want to have inclusive societies, SDGs is also focusing upon having inclusive society. That means that women, youth, elderly, they should also have a say and voice in the decision making. So for that reason, I'm saying that there is hardly any women responsive strategies in the policies, be it be the DRR policies, be it be the climate change policy, be it be the NDCs, because we have recently witnessed in the aftermath of the 2022 floods that women have specific needs which were not catered in the aftermath of the floods. So that needs to be taken care of. Then we say that the policy formulation process should be participatory, but in reality, the policies which are made, they are not reflective to the needs of the people, which shows that these policies are top to down, not they don't have bottom up approaches. So we need to keep this in mind, that Sendai framework is also emphasizing upon the disaster preparedness. If we look at the policy, unfortunately, the policy is not talking about climate preparedness, which is one of my concerns. Then I would like to pose two questions. You mentioned about the NDCs of Pakistan. So the plan in the NDCs going towards COP28 is that Pakistan will be transferring towards 60% of renewable energy, but where is the phase out plan for coal projects? We can't see that. Then again, another question, the government is emphasizing on formulating 30% electrical vehicles, but where is the issue in the batteries? The batteries by which they'll be charged will contain lithium, and lithium has a very strong environmental degradation impact. So has the government taken account of all these issues? So, and another thing, that the projects, the industries which will be implemented under the CPAC, they are mostly coal-based industries in Pakistan. Well, Pakistan is looking at a bigger picture of the investment that is coming to our country, which is a good thing, but we also have to take into account the environmental degradation it will be taking place due to those coal-based factories in the industrial zones. Because right now, China will not be sharing their green technology and their cleaner production mechanism with Pakistan. So that is also one of my concerns. Thank you from my side.
Compliances which were mandatory from international donors. Obviously, it's the taxpayer money, and they wanted to spend it with all transparency and ensure all these concerns they have. Addressing those things, while at Ministry of Climate Change, we have successfully accredited 2 national entities, NRSP and GSPAC. And once they are accredited, it means they are at equal par with any UN agencies. They could get money from Pakistan and get the project implemented. And by GCF, we mean big money. It's the largest funding available. We're not talking about Global Environment Facility or Adaptation Fund. We are talking about Clean Climate Fund. We have 2 national entities accredited. But got those things accredited, their performance has not been as per we were expecting them to bring in all this money, like the case we see in India. They got their national entities accredited and the money is continuously flowing into projects. However, with all those minimum resources at Ministry of Climate Change through Climate Finance Unit, we were able to develop a $200 million purely grant-based portfolio, which was great success. Keeping in view our track record, earlier we used to get only 14 million or 18 million from GEF, Global Environment Facility, for these climate change, mitigation projects, land degradation, and other thematic areas that they have. Now, talking about from India perspective, what we can do. You see, the funds like GCF, like Jeff, they are national funds. They have all the resources from the world, and even those funding mechanisms take good 4 years, 5 years in getting the projects approved, and it then starts implementation and everything running. But fortunately, at NDRMF, we are not that old institution. Practically, it started working in 2018-19, but we have an impressive portfolio. And if the money was not diverted to the business, I could show you many impressive projects that I have in my pipeline, and we have developed with all those provincial stakeholders. And earlier you were talking about capacity. Capacity is a very continuous process. It cannot be achieved at some XYZ point. It's a continuous learning, continuous process. And there is not a single method or strategy through which we enhance people's capacity or department's capacity. But there is one thing, getting the people involved in implementation of the projects. You see, when we started implementing projects in SIN, the whole SIN Forest Department knows what is NDRMF, what are environmental compliances, what are social safeguard compliances, what are gender compliances. They are ready to implement other projects from donors' perspectives. Their capacity has been built. Similarly is the case with other provinces that we are working with, but there's no end to it. But luckily, we have NDRMF, which can channelize all those resources. We are talking about $1 billion. How this will be channelized? I believe we need more. 10 more NDRMFs to do this climate change challenge. You see, if you are fifth more vulnerable, how serious amount of money we need? And talking about everybody is experiencing climate change, not only in their daily life. So NDRMF is not only building capacities of departments, private sectors, and local NGOs in implementing those projects, ensuring all the compliances of international donors, and addressing the root cause and projects. And second thing I would love to share with you. You see, it's a national fund. It's the Pakistan's fund, government-owned fund. So our focus is more towards real needs of Pakistan. We are more focused towards tangible outputs. Early complaint, we have been listening from all those people and partners that's okay, this sector is more towards workshops, seminars, papers, and just talk. We are far ahead from that. We are on the ground. We are generating results. For example, the SIN project, recently, which they are accessing carbon market from these mangroves. We have planted 55,000 acres of mangroves plantation in this project. This is a very small component of that project. I can give you many other examples. So learning from this example, okay, you see, there comes news that this department has got money from this initiative. Other people are trying to ride this bandwagon, and it will be replicated. Similarly, previously we had meeting. We are now talking about developing a housing project which may create carbon credits. Climate change resilient housing project which may generate carbon credits and become such sustainable future. And obviously this climate change and DR is our priority area. And we are also following all those policies and plan, be it NAP, be it our SDGs, be it climate change policy. It's part of parcel of our climate, for our funding template. We have to adhere to all those things. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a very comprehensive sort of an opening into how the ministry works and essentially the financial aspect of things and how we continue to require more and more. But just a quick, response from you on the question that we have NRSP and we have JS Bank as accredited entities. Is there a very stringent criteria for other entities to be enrolled? Why are there? Okay, okay. So is the criteria extensive, or the institutions lack that kind of a capacity where multiple can go there?
As I earlier mentioned, that these funds are even learning from their experiences. First, they were very hungry about this accreditation thing. They were encouraging more and more entities to get accredited. Now they are launching a project-specific accreditation program. Now, what they have realized not only accreditation is enough. If an entity spends good 3, 4, 5 years in getting accredited and then it starts applying for projects, it's wastage of very precious time. Can we afford it? We can. At least Pakistan can afford it. So they are learning from the experiences, and they have all the resources from the world, all those rich brains and international exposure and everything. So I believe, if you take the example of other countries, not many accredited are accredited. Last board meeting, we got 7 to 8 NOLs for accreditation and entities. You see, it should not be the case. It should be given on to entities which are on priority basis, which can address our problems in real manner. And luckily, NDRMF is also one of those entities which have got annual, and we have applied for accreditation. And recently, we have also submitted FMCA. And I'm glad to tell you, we have done all those things without hiring a single consultant. We have done all those things in-house.
That's a great thing. That is what the institutional capacity we are talking about.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So with bringing into this debate, I would also want now to move to Aftab Alam Saab and also try to extract some crux or gist from your international experience previously, and also with the Resilient Future International. That we have some hindrances, policies, gaps, and mentioned some financial aspects. So how do you see our institutional capacity vis-a-vis climate action?
Thank you very much, SDPI, Dr. Shafkat, and all the team. It's a pleasure to be here. In terms of my views, I think one is that for institutional capacities, we need to have much broader approach beyond the Ministry of Climate Change or NDRMF, because climate change is an issue which is contributed by different sectors, and different sectors are impacted by climate change, and we need a cross-sectoral approach for climate actions, whether it's mitigation, adaptation, or loss and damage. And I would like to share a few highlights about the institutional capacity, but one thing is that when we want to broaden the scope of institutional capacity, I would like to bring here the role of the Commerce Ministry, the role of Foreign Ministry. For example, the challenges Mujahid has just mentioned, and we know about the access to the finances on climate change. They are already less compared to the requirement of developing countries, but even so, whatever is available, it's very difficult to access them. We are talking about a climate change where every month becomes a record holder for the previous month, like we saw July and August this month, and it takes 10 years to access the climate change related funds. For example, many years for access to, accreditation, and then the approval of the funds. We cannot afford this. And here we need more active commerce ministries, our foreign ministries, because there is a political aspect to this as well, which means to work with other developing countries to demand the expeditious process for the access to climate fund. Because if the fund is delayed, the fund is denied, because you are losing the real gist of the need of the people or for the country. So I think in that sense, and I'd like to give another example. For example, Pakistan has led the loss and damage fund related text in COP27, but how much are we involved after that? There were 3 meetings held so far for the transitional committee. The last one 20 days back in Dominican Republic, and where various countries and groups have put forward various suggestions for the organization of loss and damage fund. And you would be surprised to note, and I haven't seen this in the media as well, that one of the proposal meant that if that proposal go ahead, Pakistan would be ineligible for loss and damage fund, because that proposal said, of course, that proposal was not from Pakistan or was from developing countries, was from another country, that said that only small island development states and LDCs should be eligible for loss and damage fund. So Pakistan is out. Pakistan is not SIDS, Pakistan is not LDC. There was another proposal that suggested that only countries with 5 million of population should be allowed to have access to loss and damage fund. So I think what was the role of our foreign ministry in those negotiations, or for that matter, climate change colleagues on that negotiations? And the 4th meeting is happening in October, and then all those recommendations will be shared in COP28. So I think in that perspective, only climate change ministry or the environment departments in the provinces are not enough. We need to see that where is this institutional capacity throughout the sector in the government. For example, if I look at the policy side, I think we are quite good in policies if we look at various components of institutional framework. Not completely, because for example, let me share one of the agriculture policies recently done by one of the provinces. They discussed very well the climate change part in the problematization of the situation in that country. They also touched upon very well the gender aspect and its relation with but when it came to the action side of the policy, there was none on the climate change related action. So I think while we have done a lot of policies, we need to improve them as well. And then come the issue of the implementation of the policies. I think one of the area which was mentioned by OAS as well, that we are very weak in the implementation. For example, the 2012-13 climate change policies, people sometimes analyze that 100 of the actions were not completed or not even started. So I think the implementation is also a big problem. Then the coordination among different departments is a problem. I was conducting an exercise where I was engaged with federal, all the provinces, even with the provinces which had the same government that run the federal part. There were huge problems in terms of coordination of policy. I think so we need to improve the coordination side as well. And in terms of another component that we need to learn from our mistakes, monitoring and evaluation component is sometimes I think that it does not exist at all. I think it should be strengthened and it should be robust as well. Let me share 2 or 3 examples. If we look at various reports and studies, including one from NUST students and from World Bank and from NDMA itself, 2 problems have surfaced again and again. There are many, but 2 surfaced are found in all the studies. One is the lack of coordination after disaster when we are trying to manage the issue. Lack of coordination among government departments and lack of capacity to respond to a crisis at local level. And these studies started after the 2005 earthquake. So you can count the years and they are continuing. They continued in the 2010 post-flood studies. They continued even in 2022 post-flood studies. So I think we need to learn from our mistake, and there should be some institutional structure for a robust monitoring and evaluation process as well. And the good thing is we have a very good individual capacity now, which is far better than what we had 20 years back. We have individuals who are contributing to international studies in IPCC and AR6 and others for the next round of AR7. Fantastic. We have people like Mujahid and others in various ministries. But that capacity is not institutional as such if we look across the sector. And perhaps one cause could be the mindset issues. Let me give you an example. Exactly 2 years back, I had a presentation in Islamabad with various senior high-ups with the ministries. And I talked about carbon border adjustment mechanism. Nobody even asked a question about that point. There were other points as well. And few months back now, when European Union has already promulgated now carbon border adjustment mechanism, then we saw a very good online session by one of the government department on the issue, which was fantastic. And remember, we have around 13 months left because it will start implementing on 1st of January of 2026. I think it's 23 or 21. So we have only few months left. And one of the organizer of the event said, because there were industry people as well, कोई परेशानी की बात नहीं है, अभी ये 2026 में शुरू होगा, तो कोई पैनिक की जरूरत नहीं. The problem is that you cannot shift your industrial mechanisms, agricultural mechanism and others in one day. You need 5, 7, 10 years first on researches, then implementation and testing it. So I think we need to improve on that as well. I should stop here and then we'll speak later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aftab. So I think it really brings in a lot of international perspective into our today's discussion. I think Awais will have his hands full with the kind of information that's coming in and different avenues of discussion also. Now I would like to open the floor for question answers. So please keep your questions very direct and pertinent. And after you have spoken, please turn off the mic so the speaker can turn on theirs.
Yeah, this is Ibadur Rahman. I work with the World Bank as a consultant. Couple of comments to you specifically. I would like to be very short. If you allow me, can I start using my national language because I don't find any. इसमें एक one thing which is very important. जो basic premises है, आपने बताया कि जो climate change policy, national climate change policy 2012 की थी, वो ये कहती थी कि provinces अपनी climate change policies बना लें. No, that was not the case. I have first-hand information because I was working on Sindh and Punjab climate change policies. और उसमें सिंध ने जब अपनी climate change policy बनानी शुरू की, तो फेडरल मिनिस्ट्री ने बाकायदा फॉर्मल खत लिखा जिसमें उन्होंने कहा कि जी आपको ये पॉलिसी लेवल की डॉक्यूमेंट बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है, ये हमारा डोमेन है, आप प्रोविंस के लेवल पे पॉलिसी नहीं बनाएंगे. और उसमें बहुत टू एंड फ्रो होती रही, जिसकी वजह से वो 2016 की पॉलिसी अब जाके 2020-21 में जाके वो फाइनलाइज हुई है. तो जो सारे पैनलिस्ट ने हमारी बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट बातें की हैं, उसमें ये एक सबसे की एलिमेंट है. आप जो प्रॉब्लम्स बता रहे थे, उन प्रॉब्लम्स में मोस्ट प्रोबेबली दिस इज द कोर प्रॉब्लम, जिसको शिबा ने मेंशन किया, वर्ड इस्तेमाल किया, डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन का. हमारी जो ओवर एंथुसियाज्म विद सेंट्रलाइजेशन ऑफ एवरीथिंग है ना, उससे ये प्रॉब्लम है. अदरवाइज डीआरआर को रिस्पॉन्ड करने के लिए क्लाइमेट चेंज तो एक ब्रॉडर स्पेक्ट्रम है, लेकिन डिजास्टर को रिस्पॉन्ड करने के लिए जो फर्स्ट कॉल ऑफ एक्शन है वो तो बिल्कुल कम्युनिटी के लेवल पर है. तो मेरा जो यानी आइडेंटिफिकेशन ऑफ प्रॉब्लम में प्लीज इसको जरूर ध्यान में रखें कि हमारी जो प्रायोरिटाइजेशन है ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स की, उसमें कौन सी चीज जो है वो ऊपर जा सकती है. सो दैट वाज वन थिंग दैट आई वांटेड टू कमेंट ऑन. जब हम उसको ले जाते हैं नीचे के लेवल पे, जैसे अभी मुजाहिद ने रेफर किया, वो जो सिंध फॉरेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट ने एक बड़ा अच्छा काम किया. जब आप फेडरल से प्रोविंशियल पे या प्रोविंशियल से लोकल पे ले जाते हैं काम को, तो उसमें ज्यादा चूंकि ओनरशिप ज्यादा होती है तो उसमें ज्यादा बेहतर काम होने लगता है. शीबा ने मेंशन किया कि हमारे यहाँ जेंडर एस्पेक्ट को उसमें माइनस कर देते हैं, लेकिन अगर आप देखें जो सिंध फ्लड इमरजेंसी हाउसिंग प्रोजेक्ट है जो रिसेंटली अभी हो रहा है, जिसमें तकरीबन कोई 1 मिलियन के करीब हाउस होल्ड्स गवर्नमेंट ऑफ सिंध बना के दे रही है, उसके लिहाज से भी जो डिजास्टर का रिस्पॉन्स है, उसके लिहाज से भी जो डिजास्टर का रिस्पॉन्स है वो स्टार्ट होता है बिल्कुल कम्युनिटी के लेवल से. हम बात कर रहे हैं क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस की बात कर रहे हैं फॉर एग्जांपल, लेकिन देयर आर सर्टेन, in my opinion, there are a lot of low-hanging fruits when we talk about adaptation. और वो low-hanging fruits जो हैं वो community के level पे होते हैं. तो मेरी पैनलिस्ट से गुजारिश है वो अगर इस पे कोई बात कर सकें या हमें बता सकें कि जो community level institutional strengthening है, जो VOs वगैरह हम बनाते हैं different projects में, village level की organizations बनाते हैं या local government है, उसके रोल को आप किस तरह देखते हैं? Do you think कि अगर मैं शीबा का वो इस्तेमाल करूं जो मेटाफर के बजाय टॉप टू बॉटम जाने के बॉटम टू टॉप जाने की अप्रोच के बारे में आप लोगों के क्या ख्याल आते हैं? इस पे जरा अगर रोशनी डालें. थैंक यू.
थैंक यू वेरी मच बहादुर रहमान साहब. खास तौर पे चूंकि लास्ट पॉइंट बड़ा ट्रिकिंग था तो मुझे जरा इस पे हुआ कि आई शुड स्पीक फर्स्ट. आई थिंक जो बेसिक चीज है वो बिल्कुल यही है. अभी जब हम सिंडाई मिड टर्म रिव्यू एसडीपीआई ने किया ना, पाकिस्तान की जो रिपोर्ट है, नेशनल रिपोर्ट, यूएन ने उसको अडॉप्ट किया, हमारा उसमें बेसिक फोकस यही था कि जब आपके पास कम्युनिटी लेवल के लिए गवर्नमेंट का स्ट्रक्चर जो लोकल गवर्नमेंट होता है एंड रिस्पॉन्स इज ऑलवेज, जब हम कहते हैं ना 24 आवर रिस्पॉन्स या इमीडिएट रिस्पॉन्स, दैट कम्स फ्रॉम द लोकल गवर्नमेंट्स. और पूरी दुनिया में उसमें जाहिर है आप भी रहे, मैं भी बाहर पोस्टेड राउंड डिजास्टर हैंडल किए एशिया रीजन में मुख्तलिफ, तो वहाँ सबसे पहला रिस्पोंडेंट यूनियन काउंसिल होती है, जो जिसको हम यूनियन कहते हैं. वहाँ मुख्तलिफ नाम है, फिलीपीन में इसको ब्रिंगाया कहते हैं या कहीं और कोई और चीज चल रही है. तो ये जो स्ट्रक्चर है हमारे अभी तक पॉलिटिकली स्ट्रक्चर को स्ट्रेंथन नहीं किया गया, लोकल गवर्नमेंट को एज पॉलिटिकल कॉन्शियसनेस. वैसे यानी गिनती पूरी करने के लिए हम डालते हैं, लेकिन आप ये देखें कि पूरी दुनिया में चाहे डेवलपमेंट का यूनिट हो, डिजास्टर रिस्पांस का यूनिट हो या किसी मिटिगेशन प्रिपेयरनेस की बात करते हो, वो यूनियन काउंसिल या विलेज काउंसिल जिनका आपने जिक्र किया वो ही होता है. अनफॉर्चुनेटली उस रिपोर्ट में भी हमने ये लिखा कि अगले जो 7 साल हैं सिंडाई के, जब हम उसको कंप्लीट कर रहे होंगे तो वी शुड फोकस ऑन दैट. इवन इसकी इंस्टीट्यूशनल जो ये वैस का पेपर है आज, इसमें भी हमने यही रिकमेंड किया है कि आप नीचे लेवल के स्ट्रक्चर को स्ट्रेंथन करें. बस अब आप देखें डीडीएमएस की हम बात करते हैं, वेयर आर डीडीएमएस? एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट का जो हेड होता है डीसी, जब फ्लड आता है उसको पता चलता है डीडीएमए एक्टिवेट होनी है, but DDMA should not be at the flood time or disaster time. It should work round the clock. उनके पास contingency plan होने चाहिए, उनके पास contingency stock होने चाहिए, but they are not there. तो ये जो DC based अभी तक जो DDMAs हैं, ये हमारा पूरा फोकस अभी तक हमारी पूरी जितनी है, हम 8-10 साल से लगे हुए हैं SDPI पॉलिसी लेवल पे, और यहाँ बहुत सारे और भी INGOs के लोग हैं, हेल्प पेज से बैठे मोहित साहब, बाकी दोस्त जो भी काम कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे, वो सब लोग इस पे फोकस कर रहे हैं क्योंकि वो सब लोग ग्राउंड पे जाके कम्युनिटीज के साथ काम करते हैं. लेकिन यहाँ शायद अनफॉर्चुनेटली पॉलिटिकल जो गवर्नेंस है उसमें मैनेजमेंट लेवल पे हैंडल किया जा रहा है. हालांकि ये गवर्नेंस इशू है कि आप उसको टॉप डाउन तय कर लें कि विदाउट लोकल गवर्नमेंट देयर इज नथिंग. अगर आप इसको मैनेजमेंट इशू रख के डीसी के जरिए हल कराएंगे तो फिर वो जो आपका सवाल है वो फिर हम फिर पूछ रहे होंगे एक दूसरे से. सो आई एग्री विद यू, वी शुड मूव ऑन दैट and we are recommending all these things throughout. Thank you so much for bringing it up.
Thank you. अगर मैं ऐड करना चाहूँ, मैम बहुत अच्छा क्वेश्चन है. हमारे पास कुछ अच्छी एग्जांपल भी मौजूद हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल 2010 के फ्लड्स में, डॉक्टर साहब आपको याद होगा, वो टुगेदर लैया एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट था, क्योंकि मैं एक इदारे के साथ मुंसलिक था, शौकत साहब भी एक्शन एड में, तो हम बहुत ज्यादा उसमें काम कर रहे थे. तो वहाँ जहाँ बहुत से प्रॉब्लम था, एक जबरदस्त केस स्टडी थी और वो गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से थी. गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से क्या थी कि वहाँ पे बहुत कोऑर्डिनेटेड रिस्पांस था लैया में जो फ्लड की वजह से और फ्लड के आफ्टरमैथ में, और बहुत सी जानें बच गई, बहुत सा नुकसान बच. यही अडेप्टेशन है कि हम नुकसान को कम से कम कर सकते. उसकी वजह जब हमने जानने की कोशिश की तो पता चला वहाँ का डिप्टी कमिश्नर انہوں نے کہا کہ جو NGOs جو سرکاری مشینری کام کر رہی ہے وہ میری کوارڈینیشن میں کام کرے یا ہمارا کوارڈینیشن. تو اس کا نتیجہ یہ نکلا کہ ڈپلیکیشن سے بچ گئے کہ ایک ہی طرف ساری امداد نہیں چلی گی. جو ایشوز تھے وہ کوارڈینیٹڈ طریقے سے مینج ہوئے اور وہاں پہ اچھے رزلٹ آئے. اگر ہم نان گورنمنٹل آرگنائزیشنز کی بات کریں اس میں یہ ہے کہ ابھی بھی کچھ ایگزامپل موجود ہیں. فار ایگزامپل میں جانتا ہوں کہ ایک آرگنائزیشن NGO کا سندھ میں یہ کام رہا کہ انہوں نے ریزیلینٹ لائیولیہڈز کا جو کام کیا وہ اتنے انٹرسٹنگ طریقے سے کیا کہ انہوں نے وہاں پہ یہ چنگچی یہ لوگوں کو دیے اور کسی کو گدا گاڑی دی ٹریول کرنے کے لیے تاکہ اپنے وہ لائیولیہڈ جنریٹ کر سکیں. لیکن ساتھ ہی یہ ٹریننگ تھی کہ اگر کوئی مسئلہ آ جاتا ہے تو یہ ایویکویشن کے لیے استعمال ہوں گی یہ وہیکلز. تو یہ ایک ایگزامپل ہے. پھر ایک اور آرگنائزیشن ہے جنہوں نے کافی زیادہ ریسکیو کی ٹریننگز کی تھی. دیکھیں ہمیں پچھلے بھی NDRMF کا ایک اور جو ایونٹ تھا SDPI کا اس میں بھی یہ بات آئی تھی کہ جو پریکٹس ہے جو ریگولر پریکٹس ہے کیا کہتے ہیں اس کو وہ ڈرل بہت ضروری ہے. اس کے بغیر آپ نہیں کر سکتے. اس کے بعد وہ ہاچ پاچ کام ہو رہا ہوگا. لیکن اس آرگنائزیشن نے اپنے لوگوں کو ٹرین کیا کمیونٹی کو ٹرین کیا. ریزلٹنٹلی جب 2022 کا فلڈ آیا تو they managed very well, they were able to save lives. اسی طرح اگر ہم 1122 کی مثال دے دیں تو جہاں پر کیپیسٹیز کے کوشش کی گئی وہاں اچھے ریزلٹ بھی موجود ہیں. لیکن کوشچن یہ ہے کہ ان کو ایک بڑے سٹرکچر میں پالیسی میں کیسے انٹیگریٹ کیا جائے تاکہ یہ ایک سکسیس سٹوری سے نکل کے یہ ایک اکراس دی بورڈ ایک سکسیس فیکٹر بن سکے.
سے ایک ایڈ کر دوں کہ ہم نے جو سیریز کی ہے نا 4 پوزیشن پیپر اس میں ہم نے صرف گورنمنٹ کے لوگوں سے یا جو پہلے موجود تھا اس سے نہیں کیا. ہم نے کمیونٹی میں جا کے فوکس گروپ ڈسکشن کیے ان سے پوچھا کہ آپ کیا سمجھتے ہیں کہ انسٹیٹیوشنل کیپیسٹی کہاں پہ کمزور ہے. دے ٹولڈ اس کہ جی ہمیں تو یہاں کو پوچھتا ہی نہیں نہ ہمیں پتا ہے. سملرلی DRR پہ جو اگلا سیشن ہوگا ہمارا 26 کو اسی طرح لاس اینڈ ڈیمیج پہ ہم کمیونٹی میں گئے ہیں. اور اس سے پہلے جو خاور کا فائنانس پہ تھا کلائمیٹ فائنانس وہ سب ان کا ہم نے ویو لے کے ان پیپر پوزیشن پیپر یہ بنائے ہیں جو آپ کے سامنے پیش ہو رہا ہے. تھینک یو سو مچ فار برنگنگ. جی اوور ٹو یو مجاہد.
جی تھینک یو.
یہ مجاہد صاحب
نہیں پلیز
نہیں آپ اس کا رسپونس
تو آپ کا کمیونٹی اسٹرینتھنگ کی جو بات کر رہے تھے اٹس اے ویری فینسی ورڈ. ہمارے یہاں اس کی مختلف انٹرپریٹیشن کی جاتی ہیں. GB والی سائڈ پہ آغا خان والی سائڈ پہ ایک بہت بڑا سکسیس ماڈل ہے. بہت بڑا وہاں پہ سکسیس سے اچیو ہوئی ہیں. آپ کسی اور جگہ پنجاب میں چلے جائیں گے تو یہ کام نہیں کرے گا. تو ڈیموگرافک فیچرز کے ساتھ اور بہت ساری چیزوں پہ ڈپینڈنٹ ہے خاص طور پہ فائنینشیل ریسورسز ٹائز ود اٹ ڈپارٹمنٹل اونرشپ. تو یہ بڑا ضروری ہے. دوسری بات یہ ہے کہ کوآرڈینیشن والی بات ہے تو اس کے لیے جیسا سیمولیشن ایکسرسائز آپ جو کرنی چاہیے تو وہ سیمولیشن ایکسرسائز دا آنسر کہ آپ اپنے آپ کو ڈیزاسٹر پریپیئرنس کے لیے بنائیں. باقی اس کے اندر بہت ساری ایسی چیزیں ہیں جس کے اندر لب کشائی نہیں کر سکتے. وہ سب شعر بول سکتے ہیں شعر بول کے میں دائیں بائیں ہو جاؤں گا. نہیں سر رہنے دیں نوکری کرنی ہے.
I would like to pose a question. In fact, 2010 ke floods, 2022 ke floods mein, what we observed is that the people who are living in far-flung areas, un tak to aid pahunchte hi nahi hai, kyunki access to road hai hi nahi, transportation ki means unke paas hai hi nahi. And they are the ones who are the ultra poor people, jinko actually fund ki zarurat hai, who are the actual vulnerable flood affectees. تو پھر اس کا کیا جو ایڈ پہنچتی ہے ان لوگوں کو جن کو آلریڈی اور آرگنائزیشن سے مل رہی ہے تو دے گیٹ ورس آف. اور جو ویمن ولنریبلٹیز کی میں نے بات ہائی لائٹ کی تھی, when the floods hit at that time, women strategies कुछ भी नहीं होती हैं, women needs are not taken care of. हाँ, बाद में post disaster जो build back better, World Bank का slogan है, rehabilitation, reconstruction, उसके अंदर अगर initiatives लिए जाते हैं तो that is good. But at the first instance हमारे पास कोई vulnerability and hazard mapping नहीं है, हमारे पास evacuation sites ही identified नहीं है. क्यों मस्जिदों में लोग जाके बैठते हैं, क्यों स्कूलों में लोग जाके बैठते हैं during the time of floods? तो ये issues हैं which needs attention from the government. And then when we talk about the capacity building of the community, making them resilient, तो हमें वहाँ भी lack नजर आता है कि उन लोगों को जो actually vulnerable हैं, जिनके पास income diversification नहीं है, हम कहते हैं, हम propagate करते हैं, advocate करते हैं to have income diversification, but due to financial constraints उनके पास नहीं हो सकते, वो एक ही income के ऊपर rely करते हैं, जो कि during the times of flood nullify हो जाते. For instance, if we talk about farmers को क्या कोई crop insurance दी जाती है? क्या किसी किस्म की compensation mechanism government के पास है? 2010 में जो वतन कार्ड्स इशू किए गए, वो अव्वल तो उन लोगों को मिले ही नहीं जो कि vulnerable communities थी, और जिनको मिले उनका ये कहना था कि this amount is not sufficient enough to make us rehabilitate. So issues हर जगह पे हैं, जहाँ जहाँ जो organizations काम करती हैं वो अच्छा काम तो highlight कर देती हैं, but governments और INGOs को, even implementing partners को ये चीज़ भी देखनी चाहिए कि वो discrepancies को भी highlight करें, जो कि ground realities हैं actual, उनको भी देखा जाए. और फिर कितने frequency के साथ इन लोगों की evacuation drills कराई जाती हैं, इनकी capacity build कराई जाती है. फिर इन लोगों के पास coping mechanism unfortunately कुछ भी नहीं होता सिवाय to sell off their assets, सिवाय to sell off their livestock. तो गवर्नमेंट की वहां पे भी कोई compensation scheme नहीं है. तो फिर policies in place, we have PDMAs, we have DDMAs, we have NDMAs, we have everything. Loophole कहाँ पे है? क्यों economic losses, क्यों कहा जा रहा है कि climate change has become a risk multiplier for Pakistan? Why? Sub policies, sub capacity building, sub institutions, sub framework, sub funding के बावजूद कहाँ जा रहे हैं हम लोग? और आज हम climate action के बारे में बात करें जबकि हम disaster management, disaster preparedness की बात ही नहीं कर रहे हैं. Thank you.
थोड़ा सा जो हम फ्लड्स के बारे में और उनकी जो एक्सट्रीमनेस की बढ़ती जा रही है, और वी आर यूज्ड टू ऑफ फ्लड्स व्हिच हैव बीन हैपनिंग लास्ट डिकेड्स. अब हम जो फ्लड एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे हैं वो इनसे बिल्कुल डिफरेंट होंगे जो हम पहले फेस करते रहे हैं. हमारी तमाम पॉलिसीज, तमाम ड्रिल्स, तमाम स्ट्रक्चर उसके लिए एब्सोल्यूट हो चुका हुआ है. अब जिस तरह के क्लाउड बस्ट और जिस तरह के एक्सट्रीम फिनोमेना हम देख रहे हैं और जो फोरकास्ट किए जा रहे हैं, तो ये जो हमारे पास एग्जिस्टिंग चीजें भी हैं, और अगर हम उन एक्सरसाइजेज को इन 100% ट्रू स्पिरिट में कर दें तो उसका कोई फायदा नहीं होगा. और क्लाइमेट चेंज इतना सीरियस थ्रेट है पाकिस्तान के लिए, इट्स मोर सीरियस देन आवर एनी डिफेंस थ्रेट. Consecutive 3 crops failure of wheat, our country will collapse. We cannot feed such huge population. ना हमारे पास इतने पैसे हैं. So it's the most imminent and largest threat to our country. और उसके लिए when we talk about actions, we are still busy in making plans, policies, and all those things. We are still talking about things, and I'm surprised why. वो एक अक्सर कोट करता हूँ तो एक वाकया कि हम अल्लाह ताला मौका देता है हम सबको, सिर्फ डॉक्टरों को मौका नहीं देता कि अपनी जन्नत कमा सके दुनिया में, हमें भी मौका मिलता. एक वो जो औरत थी जिसका बच्चा सैलाब में उसके हाथों से, एक इकलौता बेटा उसके हाथों में फ्लैश फ्लड के हाथ बह गया, और वो फ्लड कैंप में जब वो मुख्तलिफ चिल्लाती रही कि मुंडा पानी आ रहा है, पानी आ रहा है, पानी आ रहा है, तो उसके से वो चीज निकल नहीं रही थी. हम उसकी तो जो उस पर गुजरी के हम उसका अंदाजा नहीं कर सकते. दैट इज डायरेक्टली लिंक्ड विद क्लाइमेट चेंज, एंड दीज आर थाउजेंड्स ऑफ इंसिडेंट्स लाइक दिस. सो इट्स अ वेरी सीरियस थिंग. ये सिर्फ अब किताबी बातों तक नहीं रह गया.
Ji, quickly, if I can, deal with one online question, I've summed up a few questions in one. How can academia and technology strengthen institutional capacity? What role technological inventions or innovation itself or academia, research institutes, think tanks, play a part, and how? So,
थोड़े से सच बोल लेते हैं, पूरा सच बोल लेते हैं. हमारे पास जी हर क्रॉप के लिए पाकिस्तान में रिसर्च इंस्टीट्यूट है, बी इट पोटैटो, व्हीट, राइस, एनीथिंग. हम एग्जांपल ले लें इंडिया की, देयर एकेडेमिया यूनिवर्सिटी आर डूइंग ऑल दिस रिसर्च फॉर दोस कंट्रीज. हम करते हैं, अभी हम बात करते हैं, हम रिसर्च करेंगे, इतना टाइम लगेगा, मेरे ख्याल में हमारे पास टाइम ही नहीं बचा. हमने जस्ट रिसर्च को इंपोर्ट करना है और उसको टेस्ट करके अप्लाई करना है. दिस शुड बी आवर पॉलिसी. इंस्टेड ऑफ डूइंग डेवलपिंग आवर ओन लेबोरेटरीज, कीजिएगा, जरूर कीजिएगा, टाइम मिलेगा, जरूर कीजिएगा, अगर सर्वाइवल अलाउ करे. फॉर राइट नाउ इंटीग्रेशन, एकेडेमिया इन्वॉल्वमेंट, श्योर, जरूर. हमारे पास जो हमारे बनारस से कुछ अच्छे स्टूडेंट्स आए, उनके आइडिया है, वी आर ट्राइंग टू प्रमोट इट at whatever forum we have. But जो प्रैक्टिकल चीजें हैं, इनोवेशन है, वो जहरी बातों को अडॉप्ट करने में टाइम लगता है, लेकिन वी आर टोटली फोकसिंग ऑन मैक्सिमम इनोवेशन इन द प्रोजेक्ट्स व्हाट वी कैन डू. एंड आई टेल यू, एक जो बड़ी अच्छी बात है पाकिस्तान की, वो ये है कि वंस देयर इज सक्सेस स्टोरी, अदर्स डेफिनेटली फॉलो इट. इस धरती से मुझे ये बड़े पॉजिटिव है कि अगर हम इसको एक पायलट सक्सेसफुल कर दें तो इसकी रेप्लिकेशन स्टार्ट हो जाती है. पीपल आर hungry for these innovations and pilots.
On technology, I think that's an important area. I would quote here two examples. For example, SDPI is working with University of Salford in UK, and we have developed a platform which is a digital technology-based platform, which provide even scenario building regarding floods and everything. So there are many layers of data within, and then you can put in the data district-wise. We are focusing 2 districts now, Nowshera and Peshawar. And I had a meeting yesterday with NDMA chairman and their technical team. And our technical team from Salford was also on board. We are working on it. Whatever data we have, the hazard data of all districts, will be putting up in this software. This is a technology platform, and we will give the application on the mobile phone as well, so that people can access it and they can see and even see the scenarios. And the whole data would be in open source. कोई इस पे सीक्रेट वो नहीं होगा, बल्कि बड़े फ्रैंकली हमने बात की तो चेयरमैन एनडीएमए ने कहा नहीं, नथिंग सीक्रेट. आप इसको जितना हमारे पास पब्लिक डोमेन में डाटा होगा उसको एक्सेसिबल होगा. उसमें ये होगा कि लोकल लेवल सिनेरियो प्लानिंग भी हो सकती है. फॉर एग्जांपल, जितनी ऑर्गेनाइजेशनें काम कर रही हैं अपने अपने एरियाज में, चाहे वो एनजीओज हैं, आईएनजीओज हैं, लोकल सीबीओज हैं, दे कैन ऑल्सो ड्राफ्ट दिस, उसके अपने सिनेरियो प्लानिंग कर सकते हैं. पूरा मैप के ऊपर वो आपको दिखाएगा. तो टेक्नोलॉजी का ये जो क्वेश्चन है, मैं इसके आंसर में कह रहा हूँ, टेक्नोलॉजी प्रोवाइड्स लॉट ऑफ सोल्यूशन, और जो ह्यूमन एफर्ट्स है उसको कम से कम करते हैं. और ये जब आपके मोबाइल पे अवेलेबल होगा तो आप बहुत सारी चीजें देख सकेंगे. सेकेंडली, आई जस्ट केम हियर फ्रॉम ए मीटिंग फ्रॉम द मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन. They have also used the AI to gather the cases of extremism and terrorism, because we are also working, because that is also part of the community resilience. So my department looks at both kind of community resilience, whether hampered by climate change or disaster or by conflict. So I was invited. I have seen that they have developed a very good tool for that. And even they say that the data was not in a in a farm, which should be with the government. Old newspapers और पूरा कहता हमने 12 एक उन्होंने बॉट बना लिया अपना ना, ये टेक्नोलॉजी बॉट. उसके जरिए वो कहते हैं हम 12 साल का डाटा माइनिंग कर रहे हैं पुराने अखबारों से, और आपको ना उन्होंने बिल्ड करके दिखाया, थोड़ी देर में एक रिपोर्ट जनरेट होगी विद इन सेकेंड. हमने वर्ड डाले उसमें कि हमें इतने 10 साल का टेररिज्म के जो केसेस हैं, किस किस्म के केसेस थे, वो डाला और उन्होंने एक रिपोर्ट जनरेट की. इमीडिएटली वो हमारे फोन पे, हम जो एक वर्किंग ग्रुप है हमारा जिसने ये सारे काम शुरू में पहले किए, सो देयर इज अ मिनिस्ट्री ने एक वर्किंग ग्रुप बनाया, मेंबर ऑफ दैट. تو امیڈیٹلی ہمارے فون پہ آ گئی مجھے جو چیز ہم ان پیپر کر رہے تھے, ان ریسرچ کر رہے تھے. یعنی 4 سال میں مائی ٹیم ہم نے کوئی 55 پیپرز لکھے on conflict, on disaster, CBE, counter violent extremism, پاکستان کا لٹریچر. اس سے پہلے ہم سارا گلوبل لٹریچر سائٹ کرتے تھے. ناؤ وی ہیو آور اون لٹریچر. وہ کہتے ہیں ہم آپ کا یہ سارا اس میں ڈالیں گے تو ہمیں انٹرنیشنل سورسز بھی صرف کوٹ نہیں کرنے ہوں گے, ہمارا ڈیٹا ہوگا اور آپ کہیں بیٹھ کے ریسرچ کریں. سو یس, اکیڈمیا کے ساتھ تعلق اور ٹیکنالوجی ہیومن ایفرٹس کو اور ٹائم سپین کو کم کریں گے. سو وچ از امپورٹنٹ فار اے کنٹری لائک اس, جس کو بھی امیڈیٹ ڈیزاسٹرز کا بھی خطرہ ہے, ہمیں ٹیررزم کا بھی خطرہ رہتا ہے. تو ان سارے اس میں we should be vigilant and use of technology can help us. Thank you.
ایک پروفیسر کے ساتھ بیٹھ کے میں اکیڈیمیا کے بارے میں زیادہ تو نہیں کچھ کہہ سکتا, لیکن ایک دو پوائنٹس ہیں. میرے خیال میں جو اکیڈیمیا ہے, یونیورسٹیز اور ادر انسٹیٹیوشنز, they can be solutions of some of the problems we have been talking for the last 1.5 hour. For example, جہاں ہم نے کہا کہ کوآرڈینیشن کے ایشوز ہے, کیپیسٹی کے ایشوز اکراس دی بورڈ ہیں, میں سمجھتا ہوں کہ ہمارے اسٹوڈنٹس اگر یونیورسٹیز میں ان کے کریکولم میں کلائمیٹ چینج انٹیگریٹ کر دیا جائے تو وہ انجینئر ہوگا تو وہ کلائمیٹ چینج کو انڈرسٹینڈ کر کے نکلے گا, وہ ڈاکٹر ہوگا تو کلائمیٹ چینج کو انڈرسٹینڈ کر کے نکلے گا, وہ ایگریکلچرسٹ ہوگا یا وہ اینتھروپولوجسٹ ہوگا, وہ کلائمیٹ چینج کو انڈرسٹینڈ کر کے نکلے گا. I have been engaged at least with 8 universities جہاں میں یہ کوشش کر رہا ہوں, اور اس میں ایک تو یہ ہے کہ جو آسان ترین ہے, یہ اسٹوڈنٹس بیٹھے ہوئے بھی ہیں اور میرے خیال میں ان سے بھی کبھی پوچھنا چاہیے کہ یہ کیا سمجھتے ہیں, کیسے امپروو کیا جا سکتا ہے. لیکن جو لو ہینگنگ فروٹ ہے وہ یہ ہے کہ آپ کسی بھی ڈپارٹمنٹ میں ہیں, آپ اپنا تھیسس جو کر رہے ہیں, اگر کریکولم میں نہیں بھی پڑھا, آپ تھیسس میں کوئی بھی ڈپارٹمنٹ ہے آپ انٹیگریٹ کرنے کی کوشش کریں, آپ کو سولوشنز مل جائیں گے. آپ کے پروفیسرز ہیں بہت لرنڈ, جہاں میں کر سکوں گا چونکہ میں نے کچھ فریم ورکس وغیرہ بنائے ہیں کچھ یونیورسٹیز کے ساتھ مل کے, جہاں ہم آسانی سے یہ کام کر سکتے ہیں. دوسرا یہ ہے کہ کریکولم کو اپ ڈیٹ کیا جائے اور انٹیگریٹ کیا جائے. میں نے ایک یونیورسٹی کے ساتھ کوشش کیا اور آئی ایم ہیپیلی, یہ شکر ہے کہ ایک اکنامکس ڈپارٹمنٹ میں ہو گیا, لیکن اٹ واز این اپ ہل ٹاسک. یہ ان کے ساتھ تھا جو بہت اچھے دوست پروفیسر تھے, بہت ڈیڈیکیٹڈ تھے, لیکن ایون سو جو ہمارا سسٹم کے چیلنجز ہیں, اسی لیے بعض اوقات باٹم اپ اور بعض کا ٹاپ ڈاؤن کا بھی بہت ضروری ہوتا ہے. وہ اگر انسٹیٹیوشنلائز ہو جائیں وہ ٹارگیٹس تو زیادہ بہتر طریقے سے ہو سکتے ہیں. تھینک یو.
At NAST, we have also institutionalized the SDGs goals, and we make it sure کہ ہمارے students جو بھی thesis اپنا کریں, جو بھی research work کریں, وہ کسی نہ کسی SDG goal کو identify کرے. Specifically, I teach at Development Studies Department. So I teach food security and climate change. So I make it a point کہ میرے students specifically کوئی climate change issue یا food security issue کو highlight کر کے اور اس کے اوپر thesis لکھیں. But again, as sir mentioned کہ ہم لوگ as research institutions فرسٹ ہینڈ ڈیٹا کلیکٹ کر سکتے ہیں, ہم اس کو پروسیس کر کے وی کین رائٹ پیپرز, بٹ دین اگین ہم لوگ کوآرڈینیشن اور امپلیمنٹیشن میں وی ڈونٹ پلے اے رول. سو what I would like to highlight is کہ جب اسٹیک ہولڈر کنسلٹیشن میٹنگس ہوتی ہیں, as academicians we are invited, think tanks are invited, but then why is that کہ وہ جو ہمارے responses یا ہمارے concerns ہوتے ہیں, they are not reflected in the policies. اسٹیک ہولڈر کنسلٹیشن میٹنگ کا مقصد ہی یہ ہوتا ہے کہ سب ایکسپرٹس کا رائے لی جائے اور اس کے اندر اس کو انکلکیٹ کیا جائے. تو واٹس دا یوز آف دیز کنسلٹیشن میٹنگس کہ جب کہ ہم سے ہوم ورک کرایا جائے اور ہم سے کام کروایا جائے, ان پٹ لیا جائے, بٹ اس کے بعد پالیسی کے اندر وہ رسپانس ہمیں نظر نہ آئے. سو the government has to be open about it, اور اوپن مائنڈیڈنیس کے ساتھ ان کے سب ویو پوائنٹس لے کے ایکسپرٹس کے, ایکڈیمیشنس کے, ٹیکنوکریٹس کے, ان کو انوالو کیا جائے اور پالیسی میکنگ کی جائے. سو دیر از اے فلا ان دا فارمولیشن انفارچونیٹلی. So हम सबको efforts करनी होंगी so that our policies can be effective and they can produce the desired results and they can satisfy the target audience जिनके लिए वो policy बनी जाती है. Policy किसके लिए बनती है? लोगों के लिए बनती है, लोगों की वजह से बनती है. But उन्हीं की needs अगर reflect ही नहीं हो रही तो what's the purpose of that policy? So I'm sorry, I'm critiquing, giving a critique to the documents and policies, but as an academician, मेरा काम है to review the policies and to give my feedback. Thank you.
Gee, thank you very much. I think it is one of those discussions where you don't want the discussion to end, but unfortunately we've run out of time. I would like to thank all of the participants today, the speakers. I think the paper will be greatly enhanced by the input and the feedback that we've received. So to formally conclude today's session, I would request Dr. Shafkat to give a vote of thanks to participants.
I think points cover ho gaye. Shukriya, aapne keh diya. And I repeat again, thank you very much, everyone. I think that's the beauty of this session, particularly why we have focused on youth, so that they should also understand that what are the research issues and how they are tackled and what contribution they can play, the role they can play in these kind of exercises. वरना बातचीत की मीडिया में भी आ जाएगा, बट जब इन्वॉल्व होते हैं तो उसमें वो देखते हैं कि डाइवर्स डिस्कशन कैसे हो रही है अराउंड द टेबल. सो दैट वाज द पर्पस ऑफ इट. और हम आपको अभी भी कह रहे हैं कि नेक्स्ट 26 को हमारा एक इसी सीरीज का है और एक 28 को है खबर. So we invite you, and also those who are interested, they may also join it. Thank you so much once again, and we'll continue discussion. As Khavar said, it's not an ending debate, it's ongoing. Thank you so much.